Fun fact, according to a survey of 636 articles from the New York Times, Washington Post, Los Angeles Times, and Wall Street Journal, between the years 1988 and 2002, the media gave an equal amount of coverage to climate deniers as they did the scientific consensus. In other words, their effort to be balanced was actually incredibly unbalanced, giving way more exposure to a fringe and very wrong belief as if it were equally valid. And while we've since gotten a bit better at covering climate change, it kind of makes you wonder what new and fun things the media is trying to be balanced in their coverage about. You know, like all the Nazis that just a few years ago were being covered as the hip new bad boys on the right, despite being Nazis. But surely we've come away from writing doting essays on Richard Spencer and allowing him a national spotlight, right? No? The answer is no? Okay then, great. If you haven't figured it out, I'm not talking about impartiality here, but rather giving equal attention to both sides of something when one of the sides is objectively wrong and or toxic, like Nazis. This problem has been amplified by our president claiming there's a media bias against him, which he's kind of not wrong about, at least in that the majority of news coverage about him is negative, more than previous presidents. And often that news is way too focused on his awful character than policies, which are also awful. And that's the thing. Trump is, objectively so, one of the worst presidents we've had. Like, you could argue that his historically low approval rating is caused by his negative coverage, but in a survey of 170 scholars from the American Political Science Association, he ranked in the bottom 5 amongst Republican scholars. Like, I hate to break this to you, but he's a very bad president. The problem obviously being that any of his supporters hearing me say this will accuse me of being unbalanced and biased. Orange man bad. But it's just the facts. Orange man indeed bad. He just did a photo shoot where he smiled and gave a thumbs up next to an orphan baby whose parents were killed by a spree shooter who was motivated by the president's fear-mongering. Like, this isn't a discussion. You can like some of his policies and his party and still understand that he is historically and objectively a dog shit ghoul. Which is why headlines like this are super disheartening and should be changed, even if they get mocked for bending to the liberal mob. But also, they shouldn't be changed to this either. Like, the problem with the headline was that it didn't give people the broader context of what was happening, and in fact was the opposite. So a much better headline would have been, Trump urges unity despite divisive rhetoric. Or Trump urges against racism despite being, you know, pretty racist most of the time. You may see those headlines as sounding slanted, but they really aren't. They are objective statements about the president, who has openly said and done racist things. A lot of racist things. Like if you look up the word racism and then compare it to the things he's done and said, they fit that definition.
He doesn't have a birth certificate, or if he does, there's something on that certificate that is very bad for him. Now, somebody told me, and I have no idea whether this is bad for him or not, but perhaps it would be, that where it says religion, it might have Muslim. And if you're a Muslim, you don't change your religion, by the way.
He once tried to make a season of The Apprentice where white people competed against black people. We elected an objectively racist president who doesn't need to be praised when he does something not racist. But let's be clear. The media absolutely does point out his racism. I'm not saying otherwise. In fact, they cover it a lot. What I'm actually saying, along with what a few people have also said, is that maybe we need to cover it more. Like the way the BBC finally came out and said, you know what? We're no longer going to cover climate change like a debate. American news should just say, we're not going to pretend like it's not a major problem that the president is a compulsive liar and racist. And go from there. You know, just try it on. See what happens. Like ABC and CNN and NBC could have little days passed with president who is a racist ticker clock on the bottom of the screen. Every headline could be Trump, comma, a frequent liar, comma, blasts Meg Ryan, whoever on Twitter, but is also a racist. Seriously, that's a pretty big problem to have. And I know it feels like a slippery slope for the media to treat a president like he's objectively bad because it comes off as partisan. But Trump is objectively bad and should be treated that way. especially when the media's false balance is, kind of the reason we're in this mess. 30 years ago, when Trump was still running for the nomination, he actually got more than double the free media exposure of any other candidate. The rise of media coverage happening between June of 2015 to February 2016, which perfectly coincides with his rising poll numbers during that time. It didn't matter if the coverage was negative. They put him on TV more than anyone else, and so naturally, people assumed it meant he was a serious and important contender. Once we got to the big event, we were dealing with a Republican nominee who was not only racist, but jam-packed with cartoonish scandals and lawsuits. Specifically, 3,500 of them. And yet, in the interest of balance, not only did Hillary Clinton's single email scandal get more coverage than any one Trump scandal, but literally all of his scandals combined. Like, literally, this is true according to an analysis by the Columbia Journalism Review that found the media had written 65,000 words on Clinton's emails versus 40,000 words on all of the Trump scandals. Because Lord forbid anyone comes across as liberally biased when covering a presidential election where the Republican candidate is a provable grifter and racist. So glad they were so balanced and fair, because that definitely worked out for the country. So, why did the media cover so much Trump? Well, to quote the former CEO of CBS back in 2016, "It may not be good for America, but it's damn good for CBS. Thanks, buddy. Way to light our democracy on fire and sell the sweet, sweet ashes. I hope the child detention centers were worth it, champ." Hey, thanks for watching that clip. Here's the evergreen end plate to ask you to like and subscribe. It's any day of the year where you are.